Daniel Wilson stood in the sleek, modern kitchen of his Portland home, staring at the plain white envelope on the counter. It had been there for 3 days, untouched, like a silent intruder in his otherwise orderly life. Addressed to Mr. Daniel Wilson, in a sharp, unfamiliar handwriting, it bore no return address. Something about it felt wrong, dangerous, even like a crack in the foundation of the perfect world he'd built with his wife, Alice, over 15 years of marriage. The couple's anniversary was a week away, and Daniel had been consumed with preparations for the grand celebration Alice insisted on. A renowned art director at a top creative agency in Portland, Alice thrived in the spotlight, and the event was set to be a dazzling affair at a riverside estate, complete with colleagues, clients, and friends. Daniel, a 40-year-old architect who'd scaled back his own ambitions to support Alice's meteoric career, was used to playing the supportive husband. Their life in the trendy Pearl District, with its minimalist home filled with Alice's curated art and Daniel's understated designs, was the envy of their social circle. But lately, Alice had been different, distant, secretive. Daniel poured his morning coffee, the rich aroma doing little to ease the knot in his stomach. He glanced at the envelope again. It wasn't the first sign of trouble. Over the past year, Alice had started coming home late, blaming client dinners or last-minute pitches. Her phone, once casually left on the counter, now had a new passcode. There was the time he found a receipt for a bar in Seattle, someplace she swore she'd never been. "Must be a mix-up," she'd said with a laugh, her green eyes sparkling with that charm that always disarmed him. And then there was the designer dress, charged to their joint account, that she claimed was for a work event. He'd never seen her wear it. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the unease. Alice was under pressure at work, that's all. She'd always been ambitious, and he'd always been her rock. But the envelope gnawed at him. With a deep breath, he grabbed a knife from the drawer and sliced it open. The paper inside smelled faintly of leather cologne, sharp, masculine, expensive. His hands trembled as he unfolded the single page. "Dear Mr. Wilson," it began in the same precise handwriting. "You don't know me, but I know your wife. For the past 9 months, Alice and I have been very close." Daniel's breath caught. The room seemed to tilt. He forced himself to keep reading. The letter was from a man named Lucas, who claimed to be a photographer working with Alice on her agency's projects. It described in excruciating detail their affair, stolen moments in San Francisco art galleries, late-night dinners at hidden restaurants, a weekend in Napa Valley that Alice had passed off as a corporate retreat. Lucas wrote of whispered promises, of Alice calling their marriage a formality and Daniel too predictable for a vibrant world. "I've seen your photos together," the letter continued. "The way you look at her, the life you've built. You don't deserve to be lied to. I'm telling you this because I've realized she's been lying to me, too. You deserve the truth before you celebrate 15 years of sham." Daniel's coffee mug slipped from his hand, hitting the hardwood floor with a dull thud. The dark liquid pooled around his feet, but he barely noticed. His eyes were locked on the letter, each word searing into his mind. He read it again, then a third time, searching for a flaw, a reason to call a cruel prank. But the details were too specific. The name of the Napa winery, the exact dates of her work trips, even a mention of the silver bracelet Daniel had given her for their 10th anniversary, which Lucas claimed she never wore when they were together. Memories flooded back, unbidden. 6 months ago, he'd found a single stud earring, gold, not Alice's style, tucked in the pocket of her coat. From a coworker, she'd said, brushing it off. 3 months ago, a credit card statement showed a charge for a boutique hotel in Seattle. A client meeting, she'd insisted, her voice just a touch too sharp. Daniel had wanted to believe her. He'd always believed her. He sank into a chair, the letter crumpling in his fist. 15 years. He'd given up so much for her. Early in their marriage, he turned down a dream job in New York to stay in Portland, where Alice's career was taking off. He'd scaled back his own projects to manage their home, to be the steady presence she said she needed. He'd hosted her agency's parties, smiled through her late nights, and ignored the whispers from friends who thought she was too self-absorbed. All because he loved her. All because he trusted her. Now that trust was shattered. The letter wasn't just a confession. It was a mirror, forcing him to see the cracks he'd ignored. The late nights, the locked phone, the new perfume he didn't recognize. How had he been so blind? Daniel's phone buzzed, snapping him back to the present. It was a text from Alice, Running late tonight. Big pitch. Don't wait up. No, I love you. No warmth. Just like every message lately. He stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of him wanted to confront her now, to demand answers. But another part, a colder, sharper part, was waking up. He didn't want to fight in their kitchen. He wanted the truth, all of it, and he wanted her to face it. He grabbed his keys and headed out the door. There was someone he needed to see. Mark, his old college friend and a cybersecurity expert, had never liked Alice. She's trouble, man, he'd said years ago, only half joking. Daniel had laughed it off then. Now, he needed Mark's help to dig deeper. If Alice was hiding an affair, what else was she hiding? As he drove through Portland's rainy streets, the letter burned in his mind. Lucas's words echoed. She's been lying to me, too. What did that mean? Was Lucas a scorned lover seeking revenge? Or was there more to this? Daniel's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Whatever the truth was, he'd find it. And when he did, Alice's perfect world would come crashing down. Daniel Wilson sat in the dimly lit corner of a Portland coffee shop, the rain streaking down the windows like tears. Across from him, Mark Thompson, his college friend and cybersecurity expert, scrolled through a tablet, his brow furrowed. The crumpled letter from Lucas lay on the table between them, its words still raw in Daniel's mind. It had been 2 days since he'd read about Alice's affair, and sleep had become a stranger. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her laughing with Lucas, mocking the life they'd built together. But anger was overtaking shock now, and Daniel was ready to fight back. Mark looked up, his expression grim. You sure you want to go down this rabbit hole, Dan? Once you start digging, there's no unseeing what you find. I need to know everything, Daniel said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. If she's been lying about this, what else is she hiding? Mark nodded and turned the tablet toward him. All right, I started with the basics, her phone's cloud backup. She didn't cover her tracks as well as she thought. Screenshots of text messages filled the screen, intimate exchanges between Alice and Lucas that confirmed every detail in the letter. There were photos, too. Alice in a sleek black dress at a San Francisco gallery, Lucas's arm around her waist, a selfie of them in a vineyard, her smile brighter than Daniel had seen in years. Each image was a knife to the chest, but he forced himself to look. It's not just the affair, Mark said, tapping the screen. I cross-referenced your joint accounts with her travel dates. She's been funneling money, big sums, to an offshore account in the Caymans. Over $150,000 in the last 6 months. Daniel's jaw tightened. Our savings? She told me she was investing it for our future. He thought of the inheritance from his parents, the money he'd entrusted to Alice because she'd convinced him she was better with finances. How did I not see this? She's smart, Mark said. Small transfers, buried in routine expenses. But I traced the account to a shell company. Lucas's name isn't on it, only hers. Daniel leaned back, processing the betrayal's new depth. Alice wasn't just cheating, she was stealing from him, from their life. He remembered her insistence on controlling their accounts, her vague explanations about tax strategies. He'd trusted her implicitly, and she'd used that trust to rob him blind. There's more, Mark continued, his tone cautious. I hacked into her work email. She's been pitching a major campaign with Lucas, a high-profile client, some eco-brand. But the budget numbers don't add up. It looks like she's inflating costs, maybe siphoning off the difference. If her agency finds out, she's done. Daniel's mind raced. Alice's career was her everything, her identity. Risking it for an affair was one thing, but fraud? That was a new level of recklessness. Why would she do this? She's already successful. Mark shrugged. Greed? Control? Or maybe she's planning to bolt. The offshore account, the secret trips, it's like she's building an exit strategy. The word exit hit Daniel like a punch. He'd spent 15 years supporting Alice's dreams, scaling back his own architectural projects to manage their home, to be her anchor. He designed their Pearl District house to her exact specifications, hosted her agency's endless parties, smiled through her work emergencies. And now she was planning to leave him with nothing? He rubbed his temples, trying to focus. What about Lucas? The letter said she lied to him, too. What's his angle? Mark tapped a few keys. Lucas Hayes, 32, freelance photographer. Works with Alice's agency on contract. No criminal record, but he's got debt, student loans, credit cards. Maybe she promised him a cut of the money or a new life together. If he found out she was playing him, that could explain the letter. Daniel stared at the letter, its leather-scented paper a reminder of the man who'd upended his world. Was Lucas a victim, like him, or a scorned accomplice looking to burn it all down? Either way, Daniel needed more answers. That evening, he returned to their house, the silence oppressive. Alice was working late again, her absence a mockery of their marriage. He poured a whiskey and sat at the kitchen island, replaying the past year. The signs had been there. Her new perfume, sharp and unfamiliar. The way she'd flinch when he touched her phone. The credit card charge for a Seattle hotel she swore was a client expense. He'd written articles for architecture magazines about spotting structural flaws. How had he missed the collapse of his own life? His phone buzzed with a text from Alice. Asterisk pitch went great. Home around midnight. XO. Asterisk the XO felt like a taunt. He didn't reply. Instead, he called Mark. I want to confront her, but not yet. I need hard evidence, something she can't deny. Give me 2 days, Mark said. I'll dig into the offshore account and her agency's financials. But Dan, you need a lawyer. If she's stealing, you've got to protect yourself. The next morning, Daniel met Sophia Carter, divorce attorney recommended by Mark. Her office in downtown Portland was all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the chaos in his heart. He laid out everything. The letter, the affair, the missing money. Sophia listened, her expression calm but sharp. You've got grounds for divorce and a strong case for recovering your assets, she said, jotting notes. The offshore account is a red flag. If she's committing fraud, we can escalate this to the authorities. But you need to decide what you want, settlement or full exposure. I want the truth out, Daniel said, his voice low. She's built her whole life on lies. I want everyone to see it. Her colleagues, her clients, her friends. Sophia raised an eyebrow. That's bold. Public exposure could backfire emotionally and legally. Are you sure? Daniel thought of the anniversary party, the perfect stage Alice had planned. She loved being the center of attention, basking in applause. What better place to reveal her betrayal? I'm sure. She wanted a spectacle. I'll give her one. Sophia nodded. Then we need airtight proof. Keep Mark on the financial trail. I'll start drafting divorce papers and a claim for your assets. And Daniel, don't tip her off. Act normal until we're ready. That night, Alice came home at 1 a.m., her heels clicking on the hardwood. Daniel was in the living room, sketching a new building design to steady his nerves. Hey, babe, she said, her voice bright but tired. You're up late. Couldn't sleep, he replied, forcing a smile. How was the pitch? Killed it, she said, tossing her bag on the couch. This campaign's going to be huge. She kissed his cheek, her perfume sharp and unfamiliar. You okay? You look stressed. Just work? He lied, meeting her eyes. For a moment, he searched for the woman he'd married, the artist who'd once sketched their future together on napkins. But all he saw was a stranger. As she headed upstairs, Daniel's phone lit up with a new email from Mark. Asterisk found something big. Call me. Asterisk his heart raced. Whatever Mark had uncovered, it was another piece of the puzzle. Alice's lies were unraveling, and Daniel was ready to pull the final thread. Daniel Wilson stood in the quiet of his Portland home, the anniversary party 4 days away. The sleek lines of the Pearl District house, once a symbol of his and Alice's shared dreams, now felt like a stage for a lie. The letter from Lucas, the damning evidence from Mark, and Sophia's legal strategy weighed heavily in his mind, but a new resolve had taken root. Alice had built her life on deception, her career, her charm, their marriage, and Daniel was determined to tear down the facade. Not out of spite, but for the truth. He deserved it, and so did everyone else she'd fooled. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Daniel met Mark at a diner on the outskirts of town, far from Alice's usual haunts. Mark slid a folder across the table, his eyes serious. You wanted airtight evidence? Here it is. Daniel opened the folder, his pulse quickening. Bank statements, email threads, and a detailed log of transactions painted a clear picture. Alice had siphoned $180,000 from their joint accounts into the offshore shell company, with transfers carefully timed to align with her work trips. Mark had also uncovered a draft contract for her agency's eco-brand campaign, where she'd inflated the budget by 30%, funneling the excess to the same account. The most chilling find was an email from Alice to an unknown contact. Asterisk, once the campaign launches, I'm out. New start, new life. He'll never see it coming. Asterisk, she's planning to disappear. Daniel said, his voice low. The betrayal cut deeper than the affair. Alice wasn't just cheating. She was erasing him, their 15 years, everything. Mark nodded. There's a flight booked in her name to Lisbon, one way, 2 weeks from now. No return ticket. Lucas isn't listed, but I found texts where she promises him a fresh start. Sounds like she's stringing him along. Daniel's hands clenched around the folder. Lucas's letter had hinted at being betrayed, but this was worse. Alice was playing everyone, building a future on stolen money and broken promises. He thought of the anniversary party, a lavish affair for 120 guests, including Alice's boss, her clients, and their closest friends. She'd planned every detail to cement her image as the perfect wife, the brilliant art director. It was the ideal stage to expose her. I'm not canceling the party, Daniel told Mark. I'm going to use it. She wants the spotlight. I'll give it to her. Mark leaned forward, cautious. You sure about this, Dan? Going public is messy. People will talk about her, about you. Sophia's got the legal side covered, but this is personal. It'll hurt. It already hurts, Daniel said, his voice steady. I've spent years being her prop, smiling while she built her empire on my trust. I'm done hiding her lies. Mark gave a slow nod. All right, I'll keep digging into the offshore account. See if I could tie it to her directly. You talk to Sophia about the plan. And watch your back. If Alice suspects anything, she'll cover her tracks. That afternoon, Daniel met Sophia at her downtown office. The divorce attorney was reviewing the evidence Mark had sent, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. This is more than enough for a divorce settlement, she said, tapping the folder. The financial fraud gives you leverage to reclaim your assets, and if we hand this to the authorities, she could face criminal charges. But this party idea, she paused, studying him. You're playing with fire. Why not confront her privately? Daniel met her gaze. Because she's made our marriage a performance. Every gala, every dinner, I was the supportive husband for her audience. If I confront her alone, she'll lie, manipulate, maybe even turn it on me. I want her colleagues, her clients, to see who she really is. No more masks. Sophia sighed, but nodded. Fair enough. I'll have the divorce papers ready to serve her the morning of the party. We'll also file a formal complaint with her agency about the budget fraud. If you're going public, we need to protect you legally. And Daniel, don't let her charm you into backing down. She's good at that. Daniel knew she was right. Alice's charisma was her superpower, disarming doubts with a smile or a well-timed touch. Even now, knowing what he did, he felt the pull of her presence when she came home late, her voice bright with excuses. But the letter, the bank statements, the truth, they were his shield. That evening, everything changed. Daniel was sorting through Mark's evidence when a new envelope arrived, slipped under the front door. His heart sank as he recognized the same sharp handwriting. Another letter from Lucas. He tore it open, the scent of leather cologne hitting him like a warning. Mr. Wilson, it began. I know you must hate me, but Alice has betrayed us both. She promised me a future, said we'd start over together. But I found out she's planning to leave me behind, taking the money she's been hiding. I don't expect your trust, but I want to help you stop her. Name the time and place. Daniel stared at the letter, his mind racing. Was Lucas genuine, or was this a trap? Alice had manipulated them both, but trusting her lover felt like walking into a minefield. He called Mark, reading the letter aloud. Could be legit, Mark said. I checked his financials. Lucas is broke, no access to the offshore account. If Alice double-crossed him, he's got motive to turn on her. But Dan, be careful. He's still part of this mess. Daniel weighed his options. Lucas could be an ally, his testimony adding weight to the exposure. But he was also a wild card, unpredictable. After a sleepless hour, Daniel made a decision. He texted an encrypted burner number Mark had traced to Lucas. Asterisk anniversary party. Riverside Estate. Be there. Prove you're telling the truth. Asterisk. The reply came instantly. Asterisk, I'll be there. You'll see. Asterisk. The next morning, Daniel met Sophia again, sharing the new letter. She frowned. This complicates things. If Lucas shows up, it could escalate. Emotionally, maybe legally. You need to control the narrative. Stick to the evidence, the affair, the fraud. Don't let it become a circus. I won't, Daniel promised, though his stomach churned at the thought of facing Lucas in person. The man who'd slept his wife, who'd shared her secrets, would be at the party. It was a risk, but it could also be the final nail in Alice's coffin. That night, Alice came home earlier than usual, her arms full of sample menus for the party. "Hey, you," she said, kissing his cheek. "I'm so excited for Saturday. It's going to be perfect." Her green eyes sparkled, and for a moment, Daniel almost believed her. "Me too," he said, forcing a smile. "Big day." As she chatted about guest lists and decor, Daniel watched her, searching for a crack in her performance. But she was flawless, every word rehearsed. He thought of Lucas's letter, of the money she'd stolen, of the life she planned to flee. The woman he'd loved was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. Alone in his study later, Daniel laid out his plan. He'd opened the party with a speech, thanking their guests. Then, he'd read Lucas's first letter, followed by the financial evidence, projected on a screen for all to see. If Lucas showed up, his presence would seal the truth. Alice would have nowhere to hide. The party was no longer a celebration. It was a reckoning, and Daniel was ready to face the fire. The Riverside estate glowed under the Oregon sunset, its sprawling lawn adorned with fairy lights and white roses for Daniel and Alice Wilson's 15th anniversary celebration. The air buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses as 120 guests, Alice's colleagues, clients, and their closest friends, mingled under a floral arch. To the outside world, it was a perfect evening, a testament to a flawless marriage. But Daniel, standing at the edge of the crowd in a tailored suit, felt like a man on the edge of a cliff. Tonight, the truth would come out, and there was no turning back. Alice, radiant in a sapphire dress that caught every eye, floated through the crowd, her laughter bright and practiced. She'd planned every detail of this night. The string quartet, the artisanal cocktails, the speech she'd give about their unbreakable bond. Daniel watched her, his heart a mix of grief and resolve. The woman he'd loved for 15 years was a stranger, her charm a mask for lies. The folder of evidence, Lucas's letters, bank statements, and Mark's screenshots, burned in his jacket pocket, a ticking bomb ready to detonate. Sophia, his attorney, had served Alice the divorce papers that morning, discreetly at her office. Daniel hadn't seen her reaction, but her breezy text, asterisk, everything set for tonight. Can't wait? Asterisk, suggested she hadn't connected the dots. Mark was nearby, stationed discreetly with a laptop to project the evidence on a screen during Daniel's speech. And Lucas, Daniel's stomach churned at the thought. He'd invited Alice's lover to the party, a risky move that could either seal her downfall or spiral out of control. Would Lucas show? And if he did, whose side was he really on? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the MC called for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, please gather for a special moment as Daniel and Alice share their anniversary reflections." The crowd hushed. Turning toward the stage beneath the arch, Alice joined Daniel, her hands slipping into his with a performer's ease. Her smile was dazzling, but her eyes flickered with something. Nerves? Suspicion? Daniel squeezed her hand, his own smile tight, and stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice clear over the soft hum of the river. 15 years is a milestone, a chance to reflect on love, trust, and the life we've built. The guests nodded, some raising glasses. Alice beamed beside him, the picture of a devoted wife. "But tonight," Daniel continued, "I want to share a different kind of reflection, one about truth." He pulled the first letter from his pocket, its leather-scented paper creased but unmistakable. Alice's smile faltered as he unfolded it. "This arrived a week ago," he said, locking eyes with the crowd. "It's addressed to me from a man named Lucas Hayes." A murmur rippled through the guests. Alice's hand tightened on his arm, but he pressed on. "Dear Mr. Wilson, you don't know me, but for the past 9 months, I've been very close with your wife." The crowd gasped. Alice's face drained of color. "Daniel, stop," she hissed, her voice low but sharp. He ignored her, reading aloud the letter's details. The San Francisco galleries, the Napa weekend, Alice's claim that their marriage was a formality. Each word landed like a stone, the guests' faces shifting from shock to discomfort. Alice's boss, a stern woman in the front row, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't true," Alice interrupted, stepping to the microphone with a forced laugh. "This is a misunderstanding, a cruel prank. Daniel, let's talk privately." Her charm was in full force, but Daniel saw the panic in her eyes. "No more lies," he said, turning to Mark, who nodded and activated the projector. A screen behind them lit up with bank statements, showing $180,000 transferred to an offshore account. Emails followed, detailing Alice's inflated campaign budgets. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. "Alice has been stealing from our joint accounts," Daniel said, his voice steady. "From our life. In her agency's eco-brand campaign, she's been skimming funds, risking her career and your trust." The guests were on their feet now, some whispering, others staring at Alice in disbelief. Her boss stood, her expression thunderous. "Alice, is this true?" she demanded. "It's not what it looks like." Alice stammered, her composure cracking. "This is a setup, I swear." Before she could finish, a new voice cut through the chaos. "She's lying." All eyes turned to a man stepping onto the stage, tall, with dark hair and a haunted expression. "Lucas." Daniel's heart pounded as the photographer faced the crowd. "Alice promised me a future," Lucas said, his voice raw. "She said we'd start over, that she'd leave Daniel. But she was using me, just like she used him. She's planning to disappear with the money, alone." The crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. Alice's face twisted with fury. "You traitor!" She spat at Lucas, lunging toward him. Mark and a security guard stepped in, gently restraining her. Daniel raised a hand for silence, his voice cutting through the noise. "There's one more thing," he said, producing the second letter. Lucas wrote again, admitting she betrayed him, too. "This isn't about revenge. It's about the truth. For years, I supported Alice's dreams, gave her everything. She repaid me with lies and theft." He turned to Alice, who stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. "I filed for divorce this morning," he said quietly, though the microphone carried his words to every corner. "The authorities have the evidence of your fraud. This performance is over." The silence that followed was deafening. Alice's boss stormed toward the exit, phone in hand, no doubt calling her legal team. Clients whispered to each other, their trust in Alice shattered. Friends who'd envied their perfect marriage looked away, unable to meet Daniel's eyes. And then, with a choked sob, Alice broke. She sank to her knees, her sapphire dress pooling around her, her carefully crafted image crumbling before everyone who'd ever admired her. Daniel stepped back, his chest tight, but his head clear. Lucas met his gaze briefly, a nod of somber recognition passing between them. Then Lucas slipped into the crowd, disappearing as quietly as he'd arrived. Daniel didn't follow. Whatever Lucas's role, he played his part. As the guests dispersed, some approaching Daniel with quiet support, others fleeing the awkwardness, Mark clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You did it, man. She's got nowhere to hide now." Daniel nodded, but the victory felt hollow. He'd exposed Alice, but the cost was their shared history, the life he'd thought was real. He looked at the arch, still draped in roses, and felt the weight of 15 years lift and break his heart. The aftermath of the anniversary party lingered like the scent of rain on Portland streets. Daniel Wilson stood on the balcony of his new apartment in the South Waterfront, the Willamette River glinting under the autumn sun. 6 months had passed since he'd exposed Alice's lies before 120 guests, shattering her carefully crafted world. The memory of her collapse, sobbing on the stage, her sapphire dress pooling around her, still haunted him, but not with guilt. It was the cost of truth, and Daniel was learning to live with it. Tonight, he was hosting a small dinner, not to celebrate, but to mark a new chapter. He was no longer Alice's husband. He was Daniel, architect, survivor, and, finally, himself. The fallout had been swift and brutal. Alice's agency fired her the day after the party, her boss citing gross misconduct after Mark's evidence of budget fraud reached their legal team. The eco-brand client pulled their contract, and whispers of her downfall spread through Portland's creative scene. The authorities opened an investigation into her offshore account, tracing the $180,000 she'd siphoned from their joint savings. Sophia, Daniel's attorney, ensured he recovered his share, including his parents' inheritance, which Alice had nearly stolen. The divorce was finalized in 3 months, Alice agreeing to a generous settlement to avoid further public humiliation. Daniel didn't gloat. He just wanted to move on. Lucas, the wild card who'd upended everything, cooperated with the investigation. His testimony confirmed Alice's solo scheme to flee with the money, leaving him as blindsided as Daniel. In exchange for leniency, he provided emails and texts that sealed her fate. Daniel received a final letter from him, postmarked from Seattle. Asterisk, I'm sorry for my part in this. I thought I loved her, but I was just another Mark. Thank you for giving me a way out. Asterisk. Daniel didn't reply, but he didn't hate Lucas anymore. The man had been a pawn, like him, caught in Alice's web. Forgiveness wasn't there yet, but understanding was. Daniel's life, once tethered to Alice's ambitions, began to bloom. He threw himself into his architectural work, taking on a passion project, a sustainable community center for a local nonprofit. The design, with its clean lines and eco-friendly materials, earned him an AIA award, his first in years. Colleagues who'd once known him as Alice's husband now sought his vision, his voice. He'd forgotten how much he loved creating, how it felt to build something honest. Tonight's dinner was a quiet milestone. Mark, ADHD Sophia, and his parents, who'd flown in from Chicago after the party to support him, gathered in his new apartment. The space was smaller than the Pearl District house, but it was his, filled with mid-century furniture, books on design, and sketches taped to the walls. No trace of Alice's curated art, no echoes of her demands. Just Daniel's truth. As they sat around the table, plates piled with grilled salmon and roasted vegetables, Mark raised a glass. To Dan, who rebuilt his life from the ground up. You're a badass. Laughter rippled through the group, and Daniel smiled, the warmth of their support easing the ache that still lingered. Sophia, ever practical, leaned in. Heard from her? She asked quietly, her eyes searching his. Daniel shook his head. Her lawyer says she's in San Francisco, working some low-level design gig. The fraud case is still pending. She's keeping a low profile. And Lucas? Mark chimed in. Back in Seattle, freelancing, Daniel said. He sent an apology. I think he's trying to start over, too. He paused, sipping his wine. I don't blame him anymore. Alice played us both. He did the right thing in the end. His mother, sitting across from him, reached for his hand. You're stronger than I ever knew, sweetheart. We're so proud. Her eyes, red-rimmed from months of worry, shone with love. His father, always stoic, nodded. You did what was right. Not easy, but right. The conversation shifted to lighter things. Mark's latest tech project, Sophia's new case, Daniel's plans for a lecture at a design conference. But as the evening wound down, Daniel stepped onto the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. He thought of the woman he'd married, the artist who'd once sketched their future with him on coffee shop napkins. That Alice was gone, maybe never real. The real Alice had manipulated, stolen, and lied, building a castle of deceit that crumbled under the weight of one letter. He thought of Lucas, too, and the leather-scented words that had changed everything. Without that letter, Daniel might still be living a lie, propping up Alice's ego while his own dreams faded. The pain had been excruciating, but it had freed him. He was no longer the supportive husband in her shadow. He was Daniel Wilson, architect, creator, a man who'd found his voice. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. An email from his firm's director. Asterisk, your community center design is shortlisted for a national award. Can you meet next week to discuss? Asterisk. Daniel grinned, the thrill of possibility sparking in his chest. He typed a quick reply, then pocketed the phone. Back inside, his parents were laughing with Mark, Sophia refilling wine glasses. Daniel paused in the doorway, taking in the scene. This was his life now, not a performance, but a foundation he'd built himself. He raised his glass, catching their eyes. To new beginnings, he said, his voice steady. To new beginnings, they echoed, their glasses clinking in the warm light. Later, alone on the balcony, Daniel watched the river reflect the city's glow. A small package had arrived that morning, no return address, just a vintage drafting pencil and a note. Asterisk for your next design. Some endings are just the start. Asterisk. The handwriting was Lucas's, unmistakable. Daniel turned the pencil in his hand, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't need to respond. The gesture was enough. Somewhere in San Francisco, Alice was facing her consequences, a tarnished career, a looming trial, a life stripped of its former glory. Daniel didn't wish her ill, but he didn't pity her either. She'd chosen her path, and he'd chosen his. The truth, once spoken, had set him free. As the stars emerged above Portland, Daniel leaned against the railing, the weight of 15 years finally gone. He was no longer defined by Alice's lies or their broken vows. He was the architect of his own story, and the plans were just beginning.